Thanks for joining us. This is Education Insight, and I'm Lacey Kendall. According to a recent report by leanin.org, Latinas are experiencing a substantial broken rung at the initial step up to becoming middle managers. Here in the Inland Empire, Dr. Claudia Valdez of Cal Baptist University has dedicated her research to exploring the struggles, obstacles, and resilience of Latina women seeking leadership positions. She felt she personally understood that. As a PhD student, then researcher, then administrative services manager in the office of the provost, and also the president of Riverside's PIC Group, a respected young professionals organization. But while researching and writing on such resilience, her own life suddenly demanded that and more, shaping her into a source of inspiration on the Cal Baptist campus. She joined me by phone earlier this week to discuss her research, Latinas in middle management, and her own extreme need for resiliency while completing her PhD. Claudia, welcome to Education Insight.
Thank you very much.
Could you describe your work at Cal Baptist and your research on the lack of diversity in mid-level management and in higher education?
Yes, of course. So my work that I do here currently at California Baptist University is I provide high-level administrative support, and I ensure that, the smooth operations are taking place within our Division of Academic Affairs, and my role includes assisting and recruiting and hiring, training personnel, managing the provost and our senior vice president academic affairs calendar, coordinating meetings and events, and I also currently serve as the primary liaison between our office here in the provost and other departments or external institutions. Additionally, I also lead the academic affairs administrative team. I also prepare sensitive reports and communications. I handle a variety of tasks, also coordinate travel, managing contracts. I also supervise staff, assign tasks, and all while making sure that our office is running smoothly. And my work is particularly focused on maintaining effective communication and supporting our academic leadership and also promoting a positive image for our office of the provost and CBU at the same time.
That's a lot.
Yes, definitely is a lot of hats, and I definitely enjoy every day looks different, but that's what I love about what I get to do every day.
Yeah. So when did you first notice that there is a lack of diversity in higher education and mid-level management, and how did it end up impacting your own career aspirations?
So I first became aware of the lack of diversity in leadership when I was pursuing my own leadership career and while working in retail. I had entered, different spaces when I was, through leadership trainings or supervisor trainings while working in retail and in different professional settings. I realized that often there was very few Latinas present. And I noticed that there was an absence of role models as well that I can speak to based on my experiences, particularly in these leadership positions. So at the time, this lack of representation didn't discourage me. Rather, it did spark an interest and a desire to create a pathway for others like myself to follow. And so my career aspirations eventually evolved. So it wasn't just so much personal success, but it was much more of a broader mission of diversifying leadership both in business and then eventually academia. And I did want to, ensure that, future generations of Latinas could see themselves as leaders in spaces where historically they have been underrepresented.
Dr. Valdez, was there a personal experience or something in your personal life that inspired you to focus your dissertation on Latinas aspiring to leadership?
Yes, Lacey, I'd love to answer that question. So my journey has been shaped by several experiences, starting with being the eldest of three in my family. So as the first in my family to pursue higher education, I always felt a deep sense of responsibility to make my mom proud and be a role model for my younger brothers. Growing up, I didn't have my dad. I saw my mom and stepdad work tirelessly to create opportunities for us. So I knew that achieving my education and career goals was a way to honor those sacrifices. So as I progressed in my career, mainly working in retail, I realized the noticeable gap in leadership roles for Latinas. My mentors, they were very invaluable to me. However, they were predominantly men, and I found myself questioning why weren't there more Latina leaders in spaces where I worked. So that awareness stuck with me and fueled my passion to excel and pursue leadership roles. And my life took another turn, though. So when I became a mother, having my son completely shifted my perspective on career and life. And as a single parent, I wanted to create a stable, more balanced future for my son. So during this time, I decided to pursue my master's degree, not just for my own growth, but because I wanted to provide a life for my son where he could see that our circumstances didn't limit his future and that your history does not have to define your future. And so this desire to provide financial independence and security without having to rely on a husband became central to my motivation. I wanted to support my son in every way without feeling obligated to stay in a relationship simply for financial reasons. So these experiences definitely fueled my journey as a first-generation student, and the challenges I saw in retail leadership and becoming a mother, I realized how essential it is to empower Latinas to take their seats at the table. And so in my dissertation, I aim to explore, the internal and cultural barriers and systematic barriers that Latinas face throughout their leadership journeys, and how can we provide more pathways to success for future generation of Latinas.
So tell me about that research.
Yes, I first recognized and became aware of the lack of diversity while working in higher education is just seeing the lack of Latina representation. So in the higher education institution where I serve, we do have over 40% of Latin, what you would call Latinx student population, and the actual representation of leadership is not representative of our population of students. And so that's where I started to notice that there is a lack of diversity in mid-level management and even going into executive leadership.
If you just joined us, you're listening to Education Insight. So, Claudia, you no doubt heard some interesting stories during the interviews of Latinas for your research. What are some of the most surprising or impactful insights from those conversations you had with Latina mid-level managers?
Absolutely. So I had the privilege of speaking with, some incredible Latinas, about 4 different institutions in California, and the stories I heard were definitely inspiring and surprising. There were 3 particularly that stood out during my research. When I went into the research, I did assume that all Latina women in leadership roles would face substantial barriers. So whether it was gender, ethnicity, combination of both. But what I actually really found out was that 2 of the women I interviewed actually experienced a smooth transition into leadership. They encountered what I would call happenstance. So just at the right place, at the right time, and didn't really experience significant obstacles. And so that to me was surprising, but also challenged my assumption because I went into the research saying, hey, all Latinas face lots of obstacles. But these 2 women, they didn't have those same struggles. So to me, that was really surprising. And I realized that there's not a one-size-fits-all. And so that was one insightful and, finding for me. And then another unintended finding or story that was surprising is that I also went into this research thinking that much of the obstacles were related to being a Latina. However, there were some mixed responses in my research that these women said they didn't know if it was necessarily due to their gender or their ethnicity or a combination of both or being in a, male-dominated environment. So that was also really surprising to me as well.
What did they attribute that to? If they didn't feel that their obstacles were being a female or a Latina, what were their obstacles?
So a lot of what came out of it was a lack of support from leadership. That was one of the obstacles. Another one was family obligations. So that was another obstacle that came out was, I had a couple of the participants that they had kids when they were younger. And so it was just family. They had to wait until it was the right place at the right time. And so that was some of the obstacles that came out from the research.
I was reading that part of what you found was imposter syndrome was often a key challenge for Latina leaders. Tell me about that.
Imposter syndrome is a significant issue for, the Latina leaders. And actually 5 of my participants experienced imposter syndrome. And so they experienced, feeling like they had to fake it, or they didn't belong, or that, they felt, maybe they didn't belong at the seat, to have a seat at the table. So I definitely feel that, oftentimes through the research, what it revealed was that Latina were taught to be humble or taught to be loyal, avoiding drawing attention to themselves. So they often also felt they needed to put their, the interests of others before their own. And so this conflicts what often in, higher education is self-promotion, visibility. And so these can conflict and create tension with the cultural values of the Latinas.
How do you think organizations can help address that issue? Or is that something that the business should be doing? Is that something we should be aware of and learn before working in an organization? Where do we find the resolution to that issue?
So it could be a mixture of, being proactive and providing support for those, Latinas and particularly, women in color. So this could be different leadership programs, inviting them into spaces to have conversations. I know a few of the participants from my research sat on different councils in their universities. They did have different mentors, not necessarily a Latina that looked like themselves, but they had someone that was a mentor, whether it was formal or informal. So I feel like those type of ways are ways to combat and help support those that may be experiencing imposter syndrome.
Collaborating with your comrades in the workplace that are similar to yourself. Women's groups, yes. Latinas, African-American women, groups for Asian women, and so forth.
Right.
What about mentorship? Isn't that another area that we are lacking in when it comes to women in the workforce? What does an ideal mentorship program look like for Latinas and other women who want to be leaders in business and education?
So an ideal mentorship for Latinas that are aspiring to leadership roles needs to be intentional and supportive, and also recognize the unique challenges that we face. So from my research and personal experience, it was clear that mentorship played a critical role in professional advancement. So 6 out of the 7 participants highlighted the importance of having at least one informal or formal mentor to guide them into leadership roles. I would feel that, there can be multiple different pieces to a mentorship. It can be a mentorship where you have a leader that already has experience and that looks like, that has this same cultural values and looks like, another Latina. Also, a peer mentorship is incredibly valuable. So having a community of fellow Latinas who are on similar career paths, that is definitely, a powerful source to be able to have to provide that for Latinas that are working in your organizations. So, peer mentorship fosters belonging, helps Latinas navigate shared challenges, like imposter syndrome. There's multiple ways that you could go about it. Providing networking opportunities is also a vital component. Latinas often feel they lack access to informal networks that are essential for career advancement. So, this is another key opportunity, is providing networking, for Latinas working in your organization.
More of our conversation with Dr. Claudia Valdez of Cal Baptist University in just a moment. This is Education Insight. Welcome back to Education Insight and our interview with Dr. Claudia Valdez of Cal Baptist University. She's the Administrative Services Manager in the Office of the Provost and a researcher whose work has focused on the struggles of Latinas to make it into middle management. I spoke with her earlier this week about what she learned from that research, what helps Latinas succeed, and from her own suddenly unexpected need for resilience, support, and faith while completing her research. Dr. Valdez, in your research, you suggest support for graduate education and resources that would combat imposter syndrome as interventions. What kind of programs or strategies do you imagine that organizations should and could create?
So graduate, I really want to focus on graduate education and the support of graduate education. So this was one of the most encouraging and eye-opening findings in my research. So going into the study, I focused on the barriers that Latinas may face while, moving up in leadership from staff to mid-level in higher ed. And I really wanted to uncover these obstacles and challenges. However, as I analyzed all of the interviews and the data, an unexpected and powerful pattern emerged through my research. So I realized that all 7 participants reported that their career trajectories significantly changed after completing their master's degree. And they didn't say it in the interview explicitly, but as I analyzed the data and I analyzed their, the transcripts, I said each Latina, the moment that they received their master's degree, their career trajectory significantly changed. And so what was striking to me about this finding that was, as I mentioned, although they didn't directly imply that graduate education was an obstacle, it was an important strategy for them moving into mid-level leadership. So I had one, as I mentioned, she had fear as she was growing up for a tragedy that happened when she was younger. It took her 10 years to finish her master's degree, but once she did finish her master's degree, she soon advanced into mid-level leadership. And then I had another participant. She finished her master's degree 6 months. So she finished her master's degree, and then within 6 months was promoted to mid-level leadership. And so I ended up realizing, wow, this is a key strategy for career advancement for Latinas in higher education. And so when I went into my research, I, did not expect to find this. And so to me, this is one of the most important ones. And I do feel that there is different ways that you can support, Latinas for graduate education. So providing mentorship programs for graduate students would, be highly impactful. Also providing different academic support programs and also, scholarships and grants that can help Latinas to, be able to support them to want to, continue on after an undergraduate degree, because sometimes they feel overburdened or, they already have so much debt or different things or family. So just being able to provide additional financial and academic support is extremely important.
So a few moments ago, you mentioned family obligations being a struggle for many Latina women. And cultural expectations often play a significant role in career decisions, very much for women. And often more so for Latina women. How can organizations become more aware of these dynamics and support them while fostering greater mid-level and even upper-level leaders for their company?
Yes, to answer your question, one key way is through flexible work options. That could be, flexible hours, remote work, helping women and Latinas balance family responsibilities along with their professional aspirations. So I know in my own experience as a single mother pursuing a master's while raising my son, flexibility was crucial in my master's program. Another approach is having leadership development programs designed specifically for Latinas or those from diverse backgrounds. So these programs can acknowledge cultural and, family pressures that Latinas may face while also emphasizing these pressures. Offering space to discuss dual roles as both professionals and caretakers. So these type of leadership development programs, can be instrumental to helping support them. And then also organizations can help support through financial assistance for education and training. And finally, I would say that, creating inclusive and supportive work culture is vital. So celebrating cultural differences, normalizing conversations around, family responsibilities, providing an environment where Latinas feel respected and empowered can significantly enhance these leadership opportunities.
You're listening to Education Insight. There was a great article that I read about you, and it said that your Christian worldview, while working on your doctorate in education at Cal Baptist University, notably influenced the approach that you took to your research. And I was wondering how so?
That's an important question for me, and I appreciate the opportunity to reflect on this. So my journey through my doctoral program at CBU was definitely not just only academic, but also deeply personal. So the truth is my faith and my worldview have been a constant source for me of strength through my life. And so one of the most profound challenges I faced during my doctorate was the loss of my son just 1 year into my program. He went to heaven unexpectedly at 8 years old, and that tragedy was something that I could have never prepared for in my doctoral program. So as you can imagine, Lacey, losing a child is unimaginable, and it shook my world in ways that I definitely didn't prepare for. And so, however, through my grief, my faith remained my foundation. So my belief in God and his ability to carry me through was the importance of perseverance. And this became central to not only, my personal healing, but also how I approached my research and life in general. So this experience of loss and grief is where my Christian worldview had a significant impact on how I viewed my doctoral work. I knew that I wasn't just, I knew that if I wanted to keep moving forward, I had to draw from a place of strength that exceeded just academics. I had to rely on my faith and resilience. And for me, it wasn't just about getting a degree anymore. It was about honoring my son's life by pushing through the pain and creating something positive from suffering. And so I was determined to finish my doctorate for my son. And so in terms of my research, the Christian principle of perseverance became key. So the idea that we can endure hardships not because they're easy, but because they have the potential to strengthen us, to resonate deeply. This became a central, theme in the study of the Latinas aspiring to be leaders in, their various institutions where they were serving. So I saw many parallels between the struggles that, the Latinas faced in higher education and the resilience and tapping into my own personal crisis. One of the participants, they actually had lost her brother when she was much younger. That was the participant I mentioned earlier that, had this fear growing up. And so I seen a lot of, my same struggle as I was going through my doctorate in these different participants. So in this way, my personal loss and my Christian worldview shaped my approach to the research in a few profound ways.
I think a lot of people could learn from that example. I appreciate you sharing that with us. How do you hope your research will make a difference in the lives of other Latin women and influence organization practices in both higher education and business? What would you hope for?
Yes, so I would hope for is that my research would, help encourage others. I am a first-generation student. I was a single mother going through my master's and then into my doctorate. And, someone who has faced personal tragedy while pursuing their doctorate program, I would hope that my work would inspire Latina women to keep pushing forward despite challenges that they may face, while also offering organizations actionable strategies to create more inclusive environments where Latinas can thrive. So as I mentioned earlier, I said that one of the key findings from my research was the power that graduate education can help in career advancement. So, for all Latina women I studied, earning their master's degree was pivotal in their careers. And so I would hope that can be an encouragement. And another would be mentorship, because a mentorship is extremely important the majority of my participants said just how important it was. Many of them didn't have a Latina that looked like them, but just having a mentor was just so instrumental to their success. And so I would say creating mentorship programs, creating mentorship opportunities, whether it's formal or informal, is what I would hope that organizations would, take away, from this.
That is Dr. Claudia Valdez. She is the Administrative Services Manager in the Office of the Provost at California Baptist University, a researcher focused on the lack of diversity in mid-level management, in business, and in education fields. She is also the current president of the PIC Group in Riverside. Dr. Valdez, we appreciate you joining us on Education Insight today.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Fourth graders are having a very difficult time right now, both in school and at home. And educators are very clear that what is causing it is the fact that at the age that every one of us learned how to understand our emotions and to interact with others, they were in lockdown due to COVID. We look at fourth graders and the teachers and districts helping them to catch up. Join us again next week for another Education Insight. I'm Lacey Kendall. Until then, have a great week.
Education Insight is produced in partnership with KVCR San Bernardino.
Our executive producer is Jacob Poor.
And our production engineer is Tyler Veazey.
Alyssa Silva is our production assistant.
And Lacey Kendall is your host. Support is provided by College Futures Foundation.
Growing Inland Achievement. Working together for inland education and economic success.
Join us again next week for Education Insight.